Good afternoon. My name is Don Green, and we're broadcasting from Rigel Studios on a special report on some updates on, particularly with Nevada law, which have come up through the current legislative session, and some of the laws which became effective this year, and some updates on some points where we have from other jurisdictions, but applicable to Nevada. And it's very important because there are a lot of misconceptions on what has been passed and what has not been passed, and what the effect of these rulings are concerning the U.S. Supreme Court decision regarding New York Pistol Association, which was issued on June 23rd of 2022, just a few weeks ago. May we have the first slide, please? There's some major new laws in Nevada for gun safety, and I want to emphasize that, gun safety. And this is how they've been classified. Now, Nevada has banned the bump stocks, which aid in the assisting of the firing of generally AR or AK-47 platform firearms. It does not turn the weapon into a semi-auto, because if it's a a full auto, if it's a full auto, you have to have a special license issued by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and that takes about a year or more for a background check. So Nevada has banned the bump stocks, and this would assist you when there's a recoil, and then your finger keeps pressing on the trigger, and it does it more rapidly than you would if you could yourself. Now, the average AR-15, you can fire probably 10, 20-round magazines a minute if you're really good at ejecting the magazine and sliding in another, then pulling back the charging handle. So those have been banned. And that was no surprise with the current legislature, in which you have a predominantly Democrat Senate, Democrat Assembly, and you've got a Democrat as in the Attorney General's office. The next one was firearm storage. Most people do not realize that it's common sense that you should store your firearms in a safe place. We have people who just leave them around the house. Well, I want to protect myself in case somebody comes in. Well, what happens if you have small children, or a mentally deficient person who comes to stay with you, or a long-lost relative and you don't know anything about his or her background? Store your weapons properly. Store them in a safe. Store them in the closet and lock the closet. Keep the key with you. And the safes, try to get combination safes. Now, these little safes that they used to sell at Walmart and Sports Authority, the small ones for about $69.99, those are fine if you live alone in Montero Meadows, but not when you have a household where there's going to be children. So you need to realize that. Also, and we'll get into this point a little bit later as well, alcohol use in gun possession. Now, remember, the blood alcohol content when you had a firearm used to be 0.10. It is now 0.08, which makes it consistent with the Nevada DUI statute for being presumptively intoxicated. Now, I always tell my people, if you're going to go drinking, if you're going to go to a bar, do not carry your firearm. I have several cases in my office over the past couple of years in which people have been carrying their firearms into the bar, drinking all night. And I've had people who have actually been drinking all night, and they get into it with someone at the bar, and they went and retrieved their firearm from the vehicle and went back. You can't take a gun to a gunfight. Now, as far as the alcohol use and possession, remember the statute, it clearly states that the allowable the blood or breath concentration of a person possessing a firearm was reduced from 0.10 to 0.08 under the statute. And possession of a firearm under the influence of alcohol remains a misdemeanor, but you could also be charged with a felony if you have it concealed. So that you got to be very careful about that. May we have the next slide, please? There has been a lot of controversy about what the red flag law means and its enforcement in Nevada. There are some 19 or 20 states which have adopted what are known as red flag laws. Now, what is a red flag law? Bottom line is that when there is a situation involving a person who is either incompetent, a person who's violent, a person who's threatened to kill himself, a person who's threatened to kill his family members, and has access to firearms, the authorities are allowed to seize those firearms temporarily, and then you must have a hearing in which you bear the burden of proof to show that you're not a dangerous person and should get your firearms back. Now, there have been very few of these cases reported in the media, and there's very few cases which have been prosecuted. The question is why? Now, here's the rationale for these laws. The red flag laws are meant to give law enforcement, mental health professionals, and family members a tool to temporarily take away an individual's access to firearms in a shorter time frame than normal. Typically, the firearms rights in most states are only taken away if someone is convicted of a felony or so committed a mental institution or there's a domestic violence order. But since COVID-19 and the pandemic, there has been an increase in the number of red flag law requests. But you have to understand that while you bear the burden of proof, if you can show that at that particular time someone had made a mistake about you, they've got a vendetta against you, it's a nosy neighbor who just wants to get rid of, they just moved from California, they want to make sure that no one has guns, this is the problem which you're going to face. So what you have to do is not tell anybody you have guns, don't go bragging about it, and if you've got a relationship which is on the rocks, you need to do something about your firearms. Because all it takes is one party to say to the judge, I want the guns removed because my husband or my wife is a danger to herself and a danger to me and a danger to the children. And that whether it's true or not, oh, I think she's going to kill herself. Or she said to me, I'm going to kill you. Or I should get my firearm and maybe you wouldn't be such a bully. Things like that. So again, until you have this restraining order hearing, you need to get a lawyer, an experienced lawyer, put your facts together and show why that this was all a big mistake or that you called 911 in the first instance so that you were not the perpetrator of some kind of a violent act. And remember, the red flag law does not require a crime. It only requires that they feel that you're some kind of danger to the community or danger to yourself. May we have the next slide, please, which I believe is a video, and I'd like everybody to watch this, and we'll have some comments.
Okay, that's all I'm doing is verifying that, look, verifying that you have it. You got 2 different purchases. Okay. If you have them, I'm out of here. That's how quick it is. Yeah. Do you have them with you by any chance? Are they? If you can unload them and bring them out, or you can go out to your foyer here, check them out, by serial number, and we're out of here.
That's it?
Yep.
That's it. It'll take 5 seconds.
The reason we're out here is we're obviously gun violence has been an uptick, so we want to make sure we've been having a lot of issues with straw purchases. So one of the things indicators that we get is somebody makes like a large gun purchase, and then a lot of times we've been there like, oh, those guns got taken. We're like,
so the idea is when you purchase more than 2 guns at a time, it generates a multiple sale report, and it comes to us, and we have to check them out. Okay. That's all that is. You did nothing wrong. Did absolutely zero. I noticed that you were stopped in Philly, though, right, with one of your guns?
What is the lesson to be learned from this video? You saw 3 officers in tactical vests and armed going up to tell a person, we need to check on your firearms because someone's filed a paper against you. And from what I can gather, this was the first time that this homeowner had even heard about this. So you may not even realize that a certain person has gone to the authorities and obtained this restraining order, like in Nevada. They don't have to tell you when they're issuing it. They have to tell you that when they do issue it and they get your firearms, you're going to have this hearing. So you can see that, fortunately for this homeowner, he was very calm, very collected. He wasn't screaming, and he's got a door cam which is showing the officers in very, very clear. So if you're going to buy a door cam, get something like what you just saw. Don't get something that's only $19.95 as seen on TV. You need to get something good quality. But the moral here and the lesson to be learned from this video is that you may not understand that someone has filed against you. It could be a neighbor, it could be a therapist, it could be somebody you're seeing for marriage counseling. And an example that I have that I had in my office, that the marriage counselor actually called the police and they got a restraining order, to this red flag restraining order, because they thought that because my client was crying during the session that he was suicidal, and there was no evidence whatsoever. And this is what we presented to the court. There's no evidence whatsoever of being suicidal. May we have the next slide, please? And that leads us to that you can see right here that even shortly after Nevada's law was passed, and there are several sheriffs in Nevada who are challenging this red flag law, and they're threatening not even to enforce it. You can see from these 3 or 4 examples which we presented here that a Clark County man was indicted for terrorism in early 2021, after he was accused of threatening the Las Vegas Urology Center. So he's not going to get his weapons, so they're going to issue the restraining order. A man who allegedly armed himself with a machete and a handgun after a domestic violence dispute in San Diego. There's another situation where they're going to call on you. And a Las Vegas man had been arrested by law enforcement several times, including instances where he was placed in a mental health facility. So you can see that these situations are few and far between. And these are rather graphic examples of what the law was intended to whom the law was intended to apply. If you're the regular guy on the street and you've done nothing wrong, you're going to have to make sure that if your relationship is on the rocks, that you always have someone at your house. If you live alone, get a door cam. You have video in your house. Use all these preventive measures, especially if there is a serious dispute with your soon-to-be ex-spouse or ex-roommate or someone who's moved out on you under bad terms. May we have the next slide, please? In Nevada, and I want to reinforce this because I see this several times a week, and the purpose of this show and our continuing series of shows is not on what you can do in self-defense, but what you can do to prevent things from happening. And you have to be aware that a domestic violence conviction is a lifetime ban on the possession of any type of firearm or ammunition, regardless of state law. There are some states that allow felons to have a musket or like a black powder rifle like up in Wyoming. In Nevada, regardless of the type of firearm, whether it's an antique firearm, whether it's a musket, whether it's a fully automatic weapon, those are illegal. No firearms in Nevada, period. It is a lifetime ban unless you get a pardon. Number 2, if you have to go to court, listen to this. If you have an amended or reduced charge of domestic violence, it doesn't matter what you call the reduced charge, so long as the underlying conduct has the illegal or unauthorized touching, number 1, and number 2, there's a qualifying relationship. So it doesn't matter. I have a lot of people who come to me and say, and a lot of attorneys who say, well, my client who came to me can't get a firearm because he had a battery domestic violence, which was reduced to a simple assault. It's not a battery domestic violence. And I said, it doesn't matter. Because if you read the federal law and you read the Nevada law, it says that you're prohibited because there was the touching and the relationship. In Nevada, we've had ex-roommate on our law for years. That just became part of the federal law, which was signed within the past few weeks on some of this, supposed gun law restrictions, which only reinforced what was already in existence. So in a battery domestic violence case, if you have one, the strategy, of course, is to be found not guilty or have the case dismissed with less than 365 days of stay out of trouble period of time. Why? Because under the federal law, 18 United States Code, Section 922, it says that if you're sentenced to 1 year or more, or could have been sentenced to 1 year or more, you can't have a firearm, even if it's a misdemeanor. And of course, all instances of battery domestic violence. Why? Because the Code of Federal Regulations authorizes the FBI to interpret that 1 year stay out of trouble as like a probationary period for which you had a conviction of a qualifying crime, even though you were never convicted. So you're going to have to go to the FBI. That's going to take 24 to 36 months to clear that up. So if you tell your attorney, I need less than 365 days, I just did one in which it was 363 days exactly, because the DA wanted 1 year, and I finally convinced him to go to the 363 days, and my client's case is dismissed. A dismissal has the same effect of being found not guilty. And that way you can clear it up with the FBI to show that there was no conviction and there was no sentence of more than 1 year. Next slide, please. I want to reiterate, again, reinforce this point, that the FBI doesn't care what you call the crime. And in this slide, I got a letter almost 3 years ago from, over 3 years ago from the FBI, in which I asked them for an opinion as to Mr. X's case. And they said that it doesn't matter in this letter what the ultimate crime is. It doesn't matter what you call it, illegal dog catching, so long as there is the touching and the qualifying relationship. If those two elements are met, that is what's known as a disability to own a firearm under federal law. End of story. And I told this to my client, and he said, well, Mr. Green, I'd like you to try and see what the FBI says. And he spent a lot of money for us to research this point and go to the FBI, and it took almost 2 years, almost 24 months, from 2017 to 2019, in order to get this clarification from the FBI. And this is still the law. This is how they interpret it. And the U.S. Supreme Court has issued a ruling several years ago in the Chevron case, and that basically states that a federal agency is given great deference in the interpretation of its own regulations. That's the Chevron case. So for this case to be overturned is going to be extremely difficult. But subsequently, we got him, so we did something so we could get his firearms rights back. The next slide, please. These series of programs which we've had over the years has been not only presenting you examples of what happens in real situations, but also we've tried to bring to bear the law on the facts. We apply the facts to the law to the facts, not the facts to the law. And here's something you might want to take a screenshot of this, because this is what I see examples in my office in the past couple of years. That is training. Number one, do not rely on the training you got at your CCW class, as such instruction is only designed to meet the minimum requirements to get a CCW. It's like a driver's license. Getting a driver's license doesn't make you ready for NASCAR. It doesn't make you ready to drive an 18-wheeler. Number two, when you're out, and these are examples of what doesn't happen with my clients over the past several years, and we've got these cases resolved, so we don't have any pending which fall under this particular graphic. Number two, situational awareness. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't just put your head on the phone looking at who's texting you or messaging you on Facebook. B, avoid the conflict. Number one, part of it is don't get involved in someone else's fight unless you are protecting yourself or a family member, or, as in the recent mall shooting case, you may have made the right choice to shoot the perpetrator to save lives or others. That guy there was facing a great threat because of the confined area in the mall, and where this active shooter was shooting people He killed several people before a citizen with a CCW, I believe it was Indiana or Iowa, shot him dead, and no charges are filed. In California, he might have a problem because he should have, ran away and avoided the conflict. But that's not what happened in this particular situation. But don't put yourself in that situation. And this is what happened in the shooting involving that congresswoman's husband in Arizona back around 2013, 2014, where there were actual 3 people in that crowd who had concealed weapon permits and had their firearms, and they did not take out the shooter who shot that particular senator or representative's husband, who I believe was a space shuttle pilot, or he had flown on the space shuttle. So what you have to do is just be aware of your situation, be aware of your surroundings. Now, the moral of the story, don't take a gun to a gunfight. If you're allowed to carry your firearm, use it responsibly and get some training. Do not engage the attacker unless there is a legitimate perception of great bodily harm or death at that moment to you. Not minutes, not hours, not days later. At that moment. Call 911. Be on the phone. I'm the good guy. Wait, he's coming towards me. Boom, boom, boom. I have that case right now where my guy is on the phone with 911 and there's a dash cam as he's shooting the guy who's pounding on his glass after a road rage incident, and the guy has a knife. Yell out. Let people know you're the good guy. Stop. Drop the weapon. Fire. So you can attract attention that you are being attacked. Because if you don't, and that little old lady who's walking out of Walmart, when you're shooting, all she's going to see is you shooting somebody. She doesn't know if you're the good guy. So yell out so people will see that you are the one who is the good guy. And I can't stress this enough for today's program. Avoid drinking alcohol while carrying your firearm. And of course, using marijuana, which is a federal offense. You can't have a marijuana in your house. You cannot use marijuana and have that firearm. It is a federal offense. So be aware of your surroundings. Get training. That is the most important. Those are the most important points. I hope that these lessons today will be taken to heart and save this video. And for Rigel Studios, please hit like and subscribe and leave a comment. Let us know what you think. You're always welcome to call me, Attorney Don Green, and my phone is coming up on the screen on the banner. Always call me. I'll always answer your questions if I can. Remember, my practice is limited to California and Nevada. Thank you for watching.